Hi, honeys. If it's your first time here, my name is Michelle Escalin. If it's not your first time here, welcome back. I hope that whether it's your first time or not, you decide to stay a while. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in September, let you know briefly what they're about and what I thought of them. The first book that I read was Self-Care by Leigh Stein. Whew, this book, you guys. It's about two friends named Devin and Marin, and they own a company that is a online self-improvement kind of company. So basically it's like I want to say it's like an app, but a forum too. This book talks about these two women and their employees who work in the wellness or self-care industry, what they're really like in their lives and what it's really like behind the scenes. It's very juicy. There is a part of the book that I said I wanted to read to you guys in my notes. Okay. For centuries, women have been told there was something wrong with their bodies, their hair, their skin, their teeth, and their minds. They were sold products to take care of themselves. There's a lot of satire and dry humor and sarcasm in the book, which I love. I love sarcastic humor. But it talks about how we're trying so hard to be acceptable that we really lose ourselves in the process. The characters are very flawed, very lovable, and I like that. I don't like perfect characters. I don't like the rich, beautiful, skinny, has everything kind of characters, right? That's just really boring to me. So I really like that these characters are human and they have flaws. This book really highlights that trying to keep up with society, with what society deems as good, can be very exhausting, and it can bring about a lot of anxiety. It can make us feel insecure. It can make us very unhappy. It's so aggravating. It's just too much. And quite frankly, it's absurd to try to keep up with things. I mean, if you think about it, it's just constant. 1 month, this is the eyeshadow palette that everybody has to have. This $55 eye palette that some YouTube influencer might have come out with. Then you hear some scandal about the person and throw it all away and go spend another $50 on another eyeshadow palette. Oh, but that one's not in season anymore, so now you need to go buy another one. It's like no matter what you do, it's never enough. It's true, right? I mean, I feel that way. Do you feel that way? So my takeaway message is that we have to do what makes us happy, and that will equal liberation and happiness. We can't worry about whether or not our hair color is the in color or our eye color is the in color, or whether or not we have that certain look that everybody gracing the cover of a magazine has this month or this week or this year. We can't worry about whether or not our body is what society has suddenly decided is gorgeous, especially nowadays when so many of those bodies require a lot of plastic surgery to get there. I'm not saying that we shouldn't all try to be the best version of ourselves that we can be, but maybe not try so hard to keep up with this self-care industry. You could have everything if you could just be like this. Because it just feels like it's never enough. You're just never going to reach that point, right? Truth is, we can't live by other people's rules. I mean, yeah, we have to follow the law and that kind of thing, but we have to do what's healthy for us. And I fall into this a lot, especially with food. People will say, don't eat food that has this in it, or you have to have this, or that kind of thing. And it gets exhausting. And there does come a point where it's like, you know what? I just have to eat what I think is healthy for me. I have to listen to my doctors. and kind of go from there, you know? And that's just one example, but it's never ending. This book explains so much about what's wrong with our culture, and it just wraps it up in this pretty hilarious bow. It also highlights cancel culture, political correctness, social media, and that no matter what you do, you'll never be enough. So my takeaway question is, what if we are enough, exactly as we are? What if we're enough? What if we don't have to get that skin cream to be enough? What if we don't have to eat that way to be enough? What if we don't have to say those things or wear that t-shirt with that message on it, right? So, very thought compelling. I highly recommend it. I think even if you don't agree with everything that I took away from it, it's still a book that we should all probably read. We're all living in this social media world together. You're a fan of social media just like I am. If you're watching this video, we're on social media right now. And I just think it's super important to pay attention to how it affects us and to constantly think about, regardless of which platform it is, just kind of make sure that we all make a concerted effort to surround ourselves with friends or people that we subscribe to or follow or chat with that have a really positive influence on our lives instead of a I'm not enough kind of influence. So, okay. The rest of the month, I really went kind of down a little bit spookier, let's get ready for Halloween and October and fall kind of a direction. The next book that I read was Winter Counts by David Heska, Wanbli, Weiden. Oh my gosh. This book was amazing. This is another one, just my opinion, but go read it, please. Like, I think everybody should read it. So good. So good. I gave this book 5 stars, by the way. The last one was 3.5. This was 5. 5 stars. So good. This book is about a man named Virgil who is raising his nephew. And Virgil is kind of like a hired hand. He lives on a Native American reservation in South Dakota. And in Native American culture, it's a little bit different how they take care of things with the law, and it's a little bit harder to get things shut down. So he's kind of a hired hand, I guess you would say. People pay him money to have a talking with people, rough them up a little bit, maybe whoop their ass a little bit, And so he's kind of a badass. And I just found his character to be very endearing. I mean, he still had good points about him too. But like I said earlier, I love flawed characters. And he was flawed, but very lovable. This book really delves into Native American culture and what it is like to be Native American. It's written by a Native American, and I just found it very fascinating. I felt like I learned a lot, and I felt like, I'm not going to say I completely understand the culture, but I feel like I understand it more. And it's something that I've always found very fascinating. Any culture that's not mine, I want to know about it. Like, I just find it fascinating how cultures are. You do want to pay very close attention when you're reading this book. There's a lot of twists and turns. There's certain things that will happen in it that will surprise you regardless of whether you're paying attention or not. But if you're not paying attention, you're going to get shocked a lot. You're going to have to stop and think, wait a minute, who was that and what happened and why is this important now? So just make sure if you're going to read it that you pay very close attention. This author, he created such a beautiful blend of time, place, character development, story development. It was beautiful. There was no point of the plot that was left unturned for me, which is crazy, because usually when I finish a book, I think, well, there was this loose end and this one and this one. And what about that? And why did they even introduce this character? Not in this book. He really did a stellar job at just tying it all up at the end. I did. I felt like I spent months on a reservation after reading this book. I felt like I was very cozy and understanding and familiar of the culture. There was also this beautiful flow to the storyline that I felt was very enchanting. It was kind of like listening to classical music, but a whole record of classical music where you have, maybe an overture, and maybe you have a pas de deux, and maybe you have, I'm trying to think, but you know what I mean though, right? Like just a bunch of, but there's still this beautiful rhythm that kind of ties it all together. That's how this book felt. And I felt that there was a setup for a second book. So I'm crossing my fingers that there is a second book. So if you are Mr. Weiden, please write a follow-up book to this, or at least write another book so I can keep reading your books, because I really loved this book. I am going to keep this. I'm putting it in my to be reread at some point pile. Highly, highly recommend this book. And it's Winter Counts by David Heska, Wanbli, Weiden. By the way, I did get this from Book of the Month, and it was my September 2020 selection. I'll have a link down in the comments to Book of the Month. If you want to use my link, great. If you don't, I'll never know. It's not a big deal. Okay. The next book I read was The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. Woo! This was another really good book. Very thought compelling, very beautifully written, another 5-star book. And I did read in here that Miss Johnson grew up in the Mojave Desert in California, and I believe it, because if you've ever been there, there's kind of this undercurrent, there's this mystical feel to the Mojave Desert that makes you question, are we alone? Is there life on other planets? So on and so forth. And this book, I could just see that she grew up there, and this is like rooted in her thought, the mystical, what else is there out there thought. This book reminds me of the Mockingjay series. It's about a lady named Kara, and Kara lives in this world, but she is a traveler. She travels to other worlds. In these worlds, there is another her in each world. And they look like her. They might have a different name. They have the same parents and so on and so forth. They kind of have the same people in their lives. But it's almost like a choose your adventure in a way, where one circumstance might have been different in their life, or in their life or their parents' life, one decision might have been made differently, and things take a totally different direction. She only goes to the other worlds where the her is no longer alive. And she's there to get information about these other worlds or other dimensions. I don't usually read sci-fi books, but I've read this one and I thought, why don't I read them more often? I really loved it, genuinely. This book was beautiful and sad and violent and lonely. But it was also a reminder that if we're lonely, it's not because we're lonely. It was a reminder that we're in charge of our happiness, and we're in charge of whether or not we feel lonely or not. It's really good. This book definitely made me think about the possibility of other me's and other worlds and what their lives might be like. And it kind of had me think about different moments in my life where I might have made a certain decision, and what would have happened if I made a different decision. So that's a pretty crazy thing to start thinking about. It's a very interesting and fun rabbit hole to fall into. It was just so fun. It was like, which parts of my life would be the same? Which parts would be different? And then, of course, I really had to go a little bit deeper with it and think, are the parts of me that would be the same in other worlds what really make me up? Like, what really make me who I am? And if that's the case, what really defines me? It might not be what I think it is. Because there's so many things that would be different in other worlds. So that's kind of a crazy thing to start thinking about, but I just really recommend it. If you're a thinker, if you like to ponder things like that, get this book. You will love it. Then, of course, I wouldn't be a good reader at all if I didn't ponder the question reading a book like this. Do we have people now that do this and we just don't know about it? Is it possible? What would that mean? And will we ever find out if there are? I mean, I don't know. It's so fun to have these kind of thoughts, though. It's just very mentally stimulating. Another thing I loved about Miss Johnson's book was the way that the ending was. It was open for interpretation. You can interpret the meaning and what it meant and what happened how you wish, which I really love. I mean, that would be even more fun. This would be a great book club book where everybody could really sit and talk about, well, what do you think the ending meant? Well, no, you're wrong because of this. I thought, but there was this point in the book where she said this or that kind of thing. So I think it'd be really fun in that way, or even if you could read it and have a friend of yours read it too or something, it'd be really fun. I'm trying to get my husband to read it, so we'll see if he does. You want to go ahead? Marty wants to come up and join the conversation. And there was a little bit of a love story in here, but it wasn't cheesy. It wasn't cheesy, which that really gets me happy because I don't really care for the cheesy romances. So, highly recommend this book. Run out and get this one too, especially if you love books that really make you think about dimensions and are there other yous out there and that kind of stuff. And this book was my August 2020 selection. I just got behind on starting to read it. So unfortunately, I didn't read it till September, but I'm glad I read it. It was really good. And I love the back of this too. If you see how it's got this world here, and then it shows in another dimension this world. And depending on which dimension a character's in, it could be the same world but different cities, or it could be different dimensions altogether. But same on the front, it's got, this is her in one world and that's her in another. Okay, just saying hi. My cats, I have two cats. I have Marty, and then I have a girl named Zelda, and they usually, if I sit here, which most of my videos are filmed here, one of them will come join me eventually. Zelda's always in the makeup videos, and Marty tends to show up for the book videos. Huh? You a book fan? And the last book I read in September was Bring Me Back by B.A. Paris. And I have to say, I really loved this book too. This was a great month for me. Usually I have at least one book that I didn't care for or that I didn't even bother to finish. But this month it was all books that I loved. And this one in particular, well, let's see. These two books, hold on one second here. Both of these, I could not stop thinking about when I wasn't reading them, which is always in my mind, the mark of a good book. But this one, I couldn't stop reading. So I don't even know if I would have kept thinking about it when I wasn't reading it because I couldn't put it down. I read it in a day and a half. And usually it takes me about a week to read a book. I don't want to cover up Marty. Of course, he's sleeping. I guess it doesn't matter, right? So on the back it says, a decade ago, his girlfriend disappeared. He told the police the truth about that night, just not the whole truth. And that's a really good way to describe what this book is about. So the book is about a guy named Finn who had a girlfriend named Layla who has disappeared 12 years ago, right? I think it was 12 years ago. A couple years after she passes away, he has a service. One of the detectives wants to have a service for her, assuming she's dead at this point. And he meets her sister. Her sister's name is Ellen. And he ends up falling for her sister. How could he not, right? He still loves this woman, and she reminds him of this love of his life that he lost, that disappeared. So he ends up with Ellen. And then after they're happy and they get engaged, all these things start coming out. And I don't want to really reveal any more than that because I don't want to reveal the storyline. But what really happened all those years ago comes out, and you just start finding out about all these secrets. You start finding out Layla, the lady that disappeared, what really happened with her. There's just a lot of twists and turns. Like I said, there's a lot of lies. And so it's kind of trying to figure out who's lying about what. I just felt like I had to know what happened 12 years ago and what was going on now, like what was going to happen next kind of thing. Also, if I'm really honest, I didn't like the three main characters. I didn't like any of them because they were all filled with deceit. There were so many lies, and I'm not into that. So the main character, Finn, his fiance, Ellen, and the ex that disappeared, all three of them are just riddled with lies and deceit. And so I didn't care for any of the characters, but it's still, I don't have to like a character to read their story. So it was really good though. Very fascinating. It was a perfect book to read at this time of year. It was kind of spooky at certain points where it's like, oh, what's behind the door? But not scary. So if you get scared easily, I'd still read this one. I wouldn't worry about getting scared and not being able to fall asleep at night or anything like that. But it was just a really good, what happened, what's going to happen, what the heck, why is this person acting this way, that kind of thing. So I really recommend this one. I'd give this 4 out of 5 stars. And this is also, I think, I want to say it was 3 months ago, I did a review of a book called The Breakdown, which was also by this same author. This is the 3rd book that author has written. That's everything that I read in the month of September. I am super excited about what I'm reading in the month of October. Lots of Halloween, spooky themed books. Some of them are supposed to be scary and some of them are more of a mystery. One of the ones I'm reading is a cozy mystery, and it's a reread for me. It's one that I just love so much that I read every year. So I will be talking about that one as well. Next Wednesday, I will be doing a Goodwill haul. It will be me trying on all the different clothes that I've got at the Goodwill in the last month or two and showing you how they look in person and what I'm going to be wearing with them and that kind of stuff. And then in 2 weeks, that Wednesday's video will be another book video. That's what I try to do, is every other week I'll do a book video on Wednesday, and every other week I'll do a Goodwill or thrift video on Wednesday. So the following Wednesday, I will be doing a fall book tag where I will be answering with books, different books that match different questions about the fall season, which I think is super fun. I'm excited about doing it. I hope that you join me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have a great rest of your day. I hope to see you back again next Wednesday. I love you. Bye.